Tonight, we step beyond testimony into memory. Chapter 2 pulls back the veil of official deniability and enters the cold corridors of intelligence. Here, the Rendlesham incident isn't folklore, it's evidence. Through Jack Barrett's eyes, we revisit the moment when time buckled, when 3 airmen entered a forest and crossed into something not entirely of this world. And what they brought back may never leave them.
Said it was nothing, just lights in the trees, a trick of the frost, a ghost on the breeze. But I saw a mirror older than me, staring through time like it wanted to speak. The forest went silent, the world held its breath. Something was watching beyond life and death. We stepped through the green, boots breaking the seal, not chasing a light, but something too real. I came back with salt on my skin, my mind split wide where the storm got in. They call it a test, but I know the deal. History blinks beneath the green veil. Sergeant K whispered, it's not ahead, it's below. Fuse, dog tags, and timeout ought to flow. They never found what we left in that light, but it's humming in blood, and it won't come out right. They filed a report, redacted my name, buried the footage, rewrote the game. But I still hear it deep in the noise, a signal that speaks with my voice. I came back with salt on my skin, my soul unthreaded from where I had been. They say I survived, but I know I failed, left something behind in the green veil. So if you hear static out under the pine and feel like your breath ain't following time, don't look too close, don't break the seal. Some echoes are meant to stay buried in the field.
Jack sat forward, eyes adjusting to the stark interior. No cameras, no press, no protocol. Just layers of classified oversight buried beneath polished marble and silence. The official line for these hearings was disclosure. A word polished for headlines, engineered for optimism, but Jack knew better. The truth was buried deeper than most of the senators in that room were cleared to know. The public was being misled. Disclosure wasn't imminent. It was impossible. Not when Congress itself had no grasp of what was buried below, or why. He resented the charade. He didn't believe the world needed every detail, but it deserved better than pageantry and half-truths. As Jack prepared to speak, his thoughts began to slip, slipping backward through memory. Back to December 1980. To the cold wind, the static. To the night, everything changed. Behind the glass, he could already read the room, the whispered sidebars, the urgent notes exchanged, the body language tightening with every word. His testimony wasn't just revealing the past, it was activating the present, triggering alarms. And he knew the risks. The warnings had been explicit. If he ever went public, the consequences would be his to carry. But the scientists had finally forced his hand. The same ones who stood beside the anomaly, who had monitored him ever since. the ones who had quietly secured his DoD medical support and buried his records deep in special access programs. He had resisted for years, but now the cost of silence outweighed the fear. He wasn't here by accident. He was here because those who once stared into the anomaly alongside him had pushed him forward, and now history was about to wake up. It was Dr. Elias Voss and Dr. Christopher Hunter Green, the very scientists who had been stationed near the twin bases during the original incident, who quietly lobbied for Jack to appear. They knew the stakes. They had seen what the event truly was, and how close it came to destabilizing everything. Since 1980, those same scientists had quietly tracked Jack through a special access programs established shortly after his evaluation at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. His health, neurological shifts, and unexplained advancements had been monitored in secrecy ever since. They also wanted Congress to understand just how far behind the United States was falling, behind the Chinese, behind the Russians, with other nations rapidly catching up. Congress, at this point, was only interested in one thing: what was being hidden from them and where the money trail led. Even the president had no idea how deep this went or what was lurking just below the surface, behind the Chinese, behind the Russians, with other nations rapidly catching up. These scientists knew that if lawmakers fully grasped the implications, it would shift funding priorities away from conventional systems and toward exotic technologies. They needed resources, they needed personnel, and they needed it now. Their signatures were on the buried reports, and now they wanted the truth to come out before it happened again. As he began to recant what took place, he started flashing back, his mind pulling him to December 1980, to the cold wind, the static, and the moment reality first began to slip. "Then I'll start from the beginning," he said. "From the night it all began." The panel nodded. The room fell silent. A brief break was taken before they reconvened. Phone calls were made, questions were asked, and aides were instructed to set up follow-up meetings with key intelligence agencies. Those with the highest clearance began digging into the most classified files, searching for anything that could validate or suppress what Jack was about to say. Jack Barrett. Debriefing Room, Echo 1, January 1981. Jack Barrett sat beneath humming fluorescent lights, flanked by 3 intelligence officers. Not military, but intelligence. None wore insignia. Each had a leather folder and blank eyes. Their names were aliases, but their purpose was clear. David Harper, OSI. Christopher Hunter Green, CIA. Reed Nolan, NSA. Harper leaned in. From the beginning, no details left out. Jack rubbed his temples. "We weren't chasing lights. We were being pulled." Jack's initial contact wasn't supposed to mean anything. He was running a standard perimeter sweep as Police 5, covering a remote stretch near the East Gate, a frostbitten corridor where foxes outnumbered personnel. Just past 0300 hours, the static on the radio gave a low click. Then Jack keyed in. "Police 5 to control. We've got movement. Bright pulses in the tree line. Directional. Non-random. Request visual confirmation." Control came back quickly. "Copy. Police 5. Please expand on what you're observing." Jack turned the rover toward the East Gate corridor and activated the side-mounted spotlight. The frost along the treetops lit up briefly, then dimmed as something above refracted the beam unnaturally. He raised the radio again. "Police 5 to control. We have a structured light form, stationary above the Capel sector. Unknown origin, not aircraft, not flare. Requesting assessment." There was a pause, slightly longer this time. Then "Copy, Police 5. Hold position, dispatching Security 4. Security Team 4 was dispatched from Woodbridge Base. It was the SRT, Security Response Team, for the installation." Jack remained in visual contact with the object as they approached. One of the team leads, Sergeant McCabe, exited with a starlight scope and said only one word: Jesus. That's when everything went quiet. No wind, no communications, no forest. The staged test. Unknown to Jack, several military and civilian agencies had converged on East Anglia in the days before the event. Dr. Elias Voss and Dr. Christopher Hunter Green were stationed nearby, monitoring experiments tied to a covert initiative, Operation Echo Protocol. This wasn't just about UAPs, it was about time modulation and terahertz field testing. An atmospheric burst, believed to have been caused by the downing of a Zenit 6U Soviet spy satellite, collided with anomalous plasma fields already forming over Capel Green. The result wasn't merely visual. It warped the field itself. A time dilation bubble was forming that Jack and his team would soon encounter. Interaction. After the sighting was confirmed, base radio relays lit up. Protocol dictated that no on-base security detail could enter off-grid wooded sectors without clearance from command. Jack's team stood at the edge of the access trail, scanning for new movement, while Control relayed the request up the chain. 3 minutes passed. Then the call came through, direct and clipped. Security 4, this is Captain Rorden. You are cleared for controlled entry into the forest. Log your position every 60 seconds. Eyes open. We had radar contact with an object over the forest. It's gone now. Proceed with caution. Log your position every 60 seconds. Eyes open. McCabe acknowledged. McCabe muttered, "They actually cleared us." Jack just nodded and stepped forward. The air was colder now. The green mist curled around the trees like sea foam in slow motion. Their boots broke frozen moss and old pine. And that's when the anomaly began to shift. As Jack and his team approached the structure, time stretched. For the 3 men, the sensation was disorienting, like walking through molasses made of light. The forest no longer obeyed the natural flow of cause and effect. Frost on the branches seemed to freeze mid-fall. Their own breathing echoed back to them out of sync. The closer they got, the more unmoored they became. Jack would later describe it as stepping through a threshold where linear time collapsed into a loop. The structure, the source, seemed to pulse not only with energy, but with memory itself. Each step forward caused flashes, images that didn't belong, voices out of order, fractured moments that hadn't yet happened. He remembered chasing the light deeper into the woods. He and the other airman, referred to only in records as Airmen C, were closest when it happened. The object didn't simply evade them, it drew them in. It manipulated distance. What was 20 feet away 1 second became a mile the next. Time dilated in bursts, slowing thought, stretching emotion, and distorting sequence. Neurologically, this type of exposure can fracture memory encoding, leading to retrograde amnesia, or worse, false memories folded in from parallel mental states. That's what made recalling it so difficult. That's why Jack didn't walk into the light. He recalled remembering it. Visual confirmation. Jack drew a quick breath as the light reassembled itself. Not as a craft, but as a perfectly spherical mass of radiant energy, suspended just above the frost-bitten earth. Its core blazed with a molten red-orange glow, pulsing like a living heart. Around it shimmered a thin atmospheric shell, deep violet and electric blue, almost fluid in motion. The colors didn't bleed. They reacted. When Jack stepped closer, the blues sharpened into a ring, like the object was watching him. Later, intelligence analysts would pull a still frame from thermal and electromagnetic footage taken from a forward listening post on the edge of Capel Green. The image showed the same thing Jack remembered, blurry but undeniable. A burning sphere suspended in gravity, framed in plasma, brighter than the night around it. That image, low resolution but deeply unsettling, would go on to appear in classified DIA briefings marked with 3 words: phase-locked object, the missing man. Jack wasn't the only one who changed that night. One of the airmen, referred to only in surviving records as Airman C, vanished with Jack at 0330 hours during the second approach to the anomaly. The fog had thickened around them, curling into the trees like a living sheath. The radios went dead. McCabe shouted, but the sound was swallowed. Jack took a step forward, and then he was gone. So was Airman C. The forest emptied. Lost time. When Jack reappeared, he was lying at the edge of the clearing, soaked in sweat, gasping like he'd surfaced from deep water. His boots were wet with salt water, though the nearest coast was miles away. A thick hum resonated in his bones and his hands shook uncontrollably. His watch was cracked. It now read 4:28, but his internal perception was different. He thought only seconds had passed. They found Airman C 22 minutes later, slumped against a tree near Capel Green. He was pale, covered in cold dew, staring up at the sky as if it were still happening. He whispered, "The echo isn't forward, it's beneath." Psychological fallout. Airman C was later examined with his EEG showing theta spikes. His body clock was misaligned by 43 hours, and his dog tags were warped, edges fused without a burn mark. Jack later received a photograph in an unmarked envelope. It showed 3 silhouettes near Capel Green. One was Jack, one was McCabe. The third was Airman C, his body facing away, but his face looking directly into the camera. Scientific Observations, Echo Protocol, Annex C. Compiled from field notes and post-incident telemetry by Dr. Elias Voss and Dr. Christopher Hunter Green. Subject, Incident Night 1, Barrett exposure. Facility, RAF Woodbridge, Temporary Field Ops Unit Echo. The following summary reflects the combined field observations and physiological analysis conducted by Dr. Elias Voss and Dr. Christopher Hunter Green, the on-site scientific directors assigned to monitor anomalous electromagnetic and gravitational conditions during Operation Echo Protocol. Their analysis concludes the following. A stationary plasma sphere was present above Barrett's position. An infrared targeting beam, possibly from a covert aerial platform, intersected the phenomenon. This contact caused plasma asymmetry, leading to a violent downward energy displacement. The discharge enveloped Barrett in a multi-frequency electromagnetic vortex, altering measurable biological function and localized temporal conditions. The plasma didn't just react. It responded, Dr. Rayner wrote, as if the system recognized him. Dr. Voss noted that Barrett's biofeedback under stress showed pre-signal harmonization seconds before direct exposure, indicating entanglement may have begun prior to physical contact. Their comparison to fusion reactor behavior is critical. It resembled a controlled plasma collapse under external excitation, like glass blowing in reverse. Internal pressure forced an exit path downward, projecting the entire energy mass over Barrett. Conclusion. Jack Barrett was not a passive observer. He was the index node, the trigger point around which the anomaly stabilized. The convergence event was not accidental. It was targeted. Back in the debriefing room, Nolan raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying you traveled through time?" "No," Jack said. "I'm saying time traveled through me." The officers left the room without a word. Jack was transferred to a secure medical unit within 12 hours. What came next would change his body and the world forever. After they woke, they returned to the East Gate, where they were met by the flight chief and several other personnel. They couldn't explain what happened. There was missing time, and their watches were 45 minutes behind. The flight chief told them they'd lost radio contact with the team for an extended period. He pulled McCabe and Jack aside and quietly explained that he had sent 4 personnel out to search for them. Those men returned quickly, shaken. They had found the security vehicle, but Jack and the others were gone. What they did see was a large orange sphere in the distance, and each described the same uncanny sensation. Time was beginning to stand still. Spooked and disoriented, they retreated without engaging. Jack took a breath, his voice low and deliberate as the room quieted once more. "I've told you what we encountered. The lights, the time slip, the man who vanished and came back broken. But there's something else I haven't said yet. Something that changes everything." He looked down at his hands, then back up at the faces behind the glass. "That first night we went out into the forest, it wasn't just a search and report. I'm going to tell you what they were already working on before we ever stepped between those trees." He leaned forward. "I'll show you what I discovered they were building, why they needed that anomaly, and why it chose me." That was also when the cover-up began. The moment the anomaly touched them, something larger moved into place. The documentation became classified within hours. Orders were issued from above the base command. Certain recordings were pulled. Radar data was erased. Statements were quietly collected and rewritten. Those involved in initiating the cover-up included select members of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Ministry of Defense, a discrete subgroup within the National Reconnaissance Office, and key elements of the CIA, specifically led by Dr. Christopher Hunter Green. It was not one agency, it was a coalition, a convergence of those who had been waiting for something like this to happen. And now they had it. They weren't just covering up an encounter. They were protecting an asset, and Jack Barrett had become that asset. What they didn't expect was that the asset could remember. His memory was suppressed during the initial investigation. Techniques were used, chemical, psychological, and possibly electromagnetic, to blur the lines of time and dull his ability to recall what had truly happened. And for a while, it worked. But beginning 8 years later, under hypnosis, Jack's memories began to surface. Not all at once, but in fragments, symbols, impressions, voices. He started communicating with the phenomenon, or rather, it started communicating with him. The more he unlocked, the more it revealed. And then one night, in the silence between waking and sleep, it said one thing clearly: "We will be back for you." And Jack Barrett had become that asset. History didn't lose track of us that night. It started keeping score. They said it was weather. They said it was fiction. But Jack knew better. He didn't just witness the anomaly. He was rewritten by it. As the agencies buried the truth and time blurred behind closed doors, one message rang clear through the static: "We will be back for you." And in Chapter 3, they return.
Through the silence of time, I walked alone, but the stars knew my name in undertone. From Rendlesham woods to Saturn skies, I carry the echo, I lived the why. It wasn't the end, it was unfolding. Not contact made, but truth beholding. Beyond the war, beyond the flame, we weren't just shadows, we became. We